So today I'm going to be reviewing Summer in Paradise by the Beach Boys. It is their 27th album, released in 92. Also, I will be looking at the US version, not the UK version. I don't really care. There's probably differences, but do they really matter? No. The album is primarily the creation of Mike Love, the infamous singer of the group, one of the singers. He only sings though. And then Terry Melcher, who is a collaborator. After the surprise hit of Kokomo between the two and I think someone else, they were probably feeling pretty confident in their abilities, which I think led to them taking the reign on this new project. So yeah, but with some more context historically, at this point in their career, they were releasing by far their worst material, such as the albums LA Light Album, Keeping the Summer Alive, and the Still Cruising compilation, which is so painful. That's a terrible release. So yeah, it's clear they were in a creative rut. They didn't really have a good direction to go. The fact that this album is worse than their previous failures is impressive, but not that surprising, really. And a little personnel context. Brian Wilson, under the control of psychiatrist Eugene Landy, did not appear on this record. I maybe think it's because of Eugene's control, but I don't know. He could have just was like never asked to join in the studio sessions, which might also be very well be the case. And then also Dennis Wilson, their drummer, vocalist, amazing songwriter in his own right, had also passed away 9 years before this album was even created. So he didn't have any input either, obviously. So the two best, in my opinion, songwriters of the group are just not there, not in the personnel on this record. And that means there are no new Brian songs. And even Carl Wilson songs, which Carl has a couple of like good tracks. I don't think he's the best songwriter in the group, especially some of his 80s tracks, which were pretty, but at least they had some more artistic merit to them. It felt like he had like a real direction and he could make a tasteful tune. So the overall scope of the album, what is the sound? What is the sound palette of this release? This album is pretty much generic stadium pop rock. It focuses on the familiar Beach Boys topic of summertime and summer love and beaches and oceans, which makes sense. That's like their oldest trope. It's a fine topic. It's very just general, so you could do a lot with it, but they don't do much with it. Really, the lyrics are kind of bland to terrible. Yeah, that's the spectrum, bland to terrible. Mike and Carl do pretty much, not all, but most of the lead vocals on this record. Mike Love's infamous nasal becomes so unlikable throughout this record. He just can't, he's not a lead man. He can like sing like half an album, but when he's like on pretty much every track, like sometimes his vocals just get really grating. And then Carl Wilson's vocals are like pretty solid. Sometimes they're a little strained and rough, and they don't really get to shine the way they should because Carl Wilson's an amazing vocalist. The vocal harmonies also are like really scant and never that noticeable and impressive. Like even on their self-titled album from 85, they had some great harmonies. But like, yeah, that should be something you expect on a Beach Boys album, that to be blown away by some of their like amazing jazzy harmonies. But this album, maybe because Brian Wilson wasn't at all involved, they're kind of scant, they're kind of buried, they're kind of forgettable. One time they just kind of rip off a melody from like the song Hushabye, which was an old track by them. So yeah, not really much going for them in that front. The arrangements are also really bland and sometimes tacky and offensive. So overall, it's an aesthetically painful album. It just doesn't work. None of the elements feel right. It comes together in just like an unfortunate way. I don't know. It's like God. So the track listing of this album. What is the meat of this project? So when you hit play, you immediately get hit with that terrible snare sample. It's just so ear pounding. It immediately just feels compressed and crushed, and it jolts you. It's a whiplash, I suppose. There isn't much room or dynamic on this record. The mixes are just really, really rough. The claps sound awful. The saxophones and stuff are cheesy. Nothing feels that flattering to the songs. The arrangements are just cluttered and not much stands out at all. It's amazing how you can make such like instrumentally dense songs, but not a single element really stands out in a good way. It just shows like their artistic direction was like very loose and vague, that they just told like all these like studio musicians to just like play like something, whatever, without any real guidance. So yeah, and then like on top of that, there's like too many delay effects and too much compression, as I've said, and chorus effect. There is a level of catchiness to the tracks, but some of the vocal melodies being nice isn't enough to like make this album that listenable. The opener is a completely tasteless, tactless version of the Sly and the Family Stone song, Hot Fun in the Summertime, which is like a really good song in my opinion. But their version is really stiff and grooveless. It just doesn't work. They don't capture like that fun, loose funkiness of the original. Like, even though the song at the core is good, they manage to mess it up. Of course they do. Because this is Beach Boys in 1992. And another cover, Remember Walking in the Sand, is melodically interesting, but gets treated as poorly as every other track, so it doesn't actually work out in the end. And now I should mention the Bruce Johnson co-write on this album, and he also sings lead on it. It's called Slow Summer Dancin'. It's another example of terrible production choices. The snare is so comically loud. It just does not read the room at all. It's funny. It's funny just how off it is. Bruce did this like soft, loungy, spacey, bittersweet piano ballad. His songwriting can be charming on like some of their older records, like Sunflower Surfs Up. Here, not really. It doesn't feel versatile anymore, his songwriting. It feels like, yeah, I've heard this, but way better, and with way better production. And like this is like a very dated sounding song too. It sounds like it was written in like the late 60s, early 70s. Clearly the band was running low on new ideas. Like that is obvious at this point. Island Fever is another example of that. It is basically them copying Kokomo, which, love it or hate it, it was a big song for them, and I respect it. It's catchy, it's corny, but it's fine. Island Fever isn't that. It kind of just misses with the charm. Like, it just shows the reusing things over and over again because they just really want a single. I blame that on Mike Love. He just wants the radio hits. And at another track, kind of islandy, vacationy, Lahaina Aloha, don't know if I pronounced that right, but it has pretty passable songwriting though. Like, although the snare on this track is really crude and not subtle, nothing in the mix is subtle, like the actual songwriting is like pretty decent. Like Carl's vocals on the chorus is kind of pretty, and if you ignore the garbage around it, it's an okay song. Even then, the lyrics are like overly dramatic and sentimental love lyrics. What Mike Love can do very poorly, really. But this is actually the best that this album has to offer. To add on to my brief glimpse of positivity, I'm going to talk about Strange Things Happen, which is the heart of the record, you could say. It's the longest track. It feels like really grand and it's anthemic, really. It's a love song about a hippie type astrology loving girl, and it's so 80s. It's so very 80s, but it kind of has a cute charm to it. Even then, it kind of just doesn't work out in the end. It's like the song fizzles out with some directionless guitar wailing, some terrible vocal looping, where they say the lines "strange things" like looped, and then it fades in and out. It's kind of funny. This song is catchy, and my second favorite from the album. The only other song from this album that I actually don't think is complete trash, but it's like kind of funny. It's kind of lame. It's very lame, actually. I don't know. It doesn't sound like the Beach Boys, but I can't really complain with this track. It works a bit, a little bit. So Summer of Love is another track that doesn't sound that much like the Beach Boys, but this time it's terrible. It's so terrible. It's very terrible. It's one of the worst tracks, but I'll get to the other ones that I think are bad. There's two others, I guess, that I hate. But yeah, this song, Summer of Love, desperately tries to sound more relevant. It tries to modernize their sound. But the artistic direction on this album is god-awful. It's really bad. Like, there's a record scratching and talk rapping. It's not like rapping, but it's not really talking. It's just Mike Love being stupid, really. The lyrics are dumb. Mike Love is weird and cringy. References previous Beach Boys tracks and albums and stuff, and it's bad. And like the lower Mike Love vocals also on this track are like really stupid. He goes into this lower range, but it's so compressed it in your face that sounds really dumb. Like the chorus has some good melodic ideas, but the song is detestable beyond that basic compositional level of a passable melody. We have tacky vocal effects. It's just, again, there's this tension between like what they were doing in the past and what worked then, and then what they're doing now and trying to figure out like what are they supposed to do. But I could tell you, Mike Love, this is not what you're supposed to do. Still Surfin' is another track that has a similar issue with trying to come to terms with your waning relevancy. It's the song about a guy who's still surfing after all those years. There's an obvious subtext that I don't really need to explain. It's fine lyrically, but musically it sucks. But even lyrically, I don't know. It's like whatever at this point. I get it, the past was cool, but just kind of move on maybe, or like do something clever with it. I don't know. And like again, with the percussion and the production and the mixing and everything, it's just like there's this like slightly chaotic percussive bit that has like this really off low end where there's like these terrible fills at this instrumental break. Does not work at all. Nothing does on this record though, so what's the point of even saying that? Just assume everything doesn't work on this. The title track. This is one of the songs that I was talking about it being particularly bad in my opinion. The lyrics are the thing that I really have a qualm with. It's a song about environmentalism, which is fine, but the painful references make this song really hard to just listen to, really. The song keeps bragging, but then it like gets all preachy. It's like, why are you mixing these two? Like, I get it, you were around in the 60s when the environmental crisis wasn't as bad, but why are you talking about Help Me Rhonda? And like, what is it, like how they were having fun as America's band. Yeah, like stop bragging. Like are you wanting to write a song about the environment, or are you wanting to just gloat? Like, it talks about the ozone layer and deforestation, and the message is good, but the subject matter is so sloppily tackled. Like, if they wanted to handle the environment, just like, don't brag. What? So yeah, now I hate the environment. There's also a redo of the early Beach Boys single, Surfin'. Like, their first single, basically. Needless to say, the song does not translate well with this overblown pop rock 80s sound. The original was very homestrung, very loose, rough, and it wasn't that great. It was like charming in the 60s, in 61, which is a very long time ago, even for 92. I don't know why they wanted to redo this one. This one would need so much just retooling to make it work, and it doesn't work. It's like really overblown. It's like needlessly heavy. It's so 80s. It's so very 80s. This whole album is really, really 80s for being released in 92. But yeah, it sucks. It's like, it's the second song, and like at that point, it's clear that this album doesn't have anything good to offer you. But the final nail on the coffin, it's the closer. It's the closer. It's Dennis Wilson's beloved track, Forever, which is an incredible song, one of my favorite Dennis tracks. It's an amazing ballad from the amazing album Sunflower. I really like the song. It's pretty nice, and they decided in all their wisdom to redo it for this album, which is a shame. Why? Why did they do it? And John Stamos, of all people, sings on it. He closes out the record. John Stamos. Like, I get that the song was on Full House, but why are you putting John Stamos on your record? His vocals are okay. They're not too overdone. They're like more settled than the rest of the instruments, but it's still like not great. I don't know why. I don't feel good about this track. I really don't feel good about what they did with this one. Like, Dennis, I don't think would like this at all. He had a lot of artistic integrity, and this has none, this version. So yeah, god damn it. It's only appropriate if you wanted to do like a heartfelt tribute to Dennis, but this is not that. This is by far the hardest song to stomach on this record. And yeah, and it leaves you with that. If that's how it ends, that's how it wraps up. It ends with that terrible redo of such a great song. It just pisses me off. It really does. It's not great. It's really not great, this whole album. So, in closing, what is there to learn from this? I think it's really an indicator that presentation really matters. Like, there's a couple okay melodic ideas on here, but the arrangements, the production, the mixing, it doesn't work at all, and it spoils any redeemability that these tracks have, in my opinion. But even then, the original tracks for this album are generally uninteresting and just kind of simple and bland, lyrically rocky. It's just like, it's a dated record. It gives me ear fatigue. It feels soulless. It's a weak project. It's a very weak project. I would probably consider it the worst album by them, though Stars and Stripes Volume 1 is also really bad. But no, I'm taking a stand. This is bad. This is the worst Beach Boys record. It's a corny, ugly album. It's grating. It hurts. It hurts my ears. It hurts my head. It doesn't understand subtlety, and it sucks. And I am done talking about it for now, I guess. Goodbye.